Hi there, Duke in New York, summer internship people in this remote year of 2021. And welcome to those of you joining us on the DiNY network. We have some wonderful guests for you, and we have some wonderful students for you. And we're sorry that you DiNYites will not be able to participate in the question and answer period. But we're kind of hoping that the members of the class will ask some of the questions that you might ask, and that the guests will answer them along the way. So what we normally do is to do a very quick introduction to the guests. We've already done that, and then to have all the students introduce themselves. We've already done that too. So we're going to kind of leap right in, okay? And I'm gonna ask a kind of omnibus question of each guest, okay? And then I would invite the guests to kind of interrupt each other if there's something, an amazing thing. Oh, I was your roommate. I didn't even, no, so if anything like that happens, feel free to interrupt. And then we'll kind of ask some more probing questions and go from there. So I don't know if they're on my screen in a particular order, and from left to right. Let's start with Mika. And what I'd like you to do, guests, if you could tell people your name, they can see that, but tell them your last name as well. Tell them your year at Duke and your major, because people are always very interested in knowing what you did at Duke. I know you've already said some of that, but do it again. Where you interned when you did Duke in New York, and where you are now. And if that includes a little narrative of how you got there, that would be great. Okay, so Mika, we'll start with you.
Yeah, sure thing. So my name is Mika. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm based in Chicago, sometimes in New York. When I was at Duke, I majored in visual and media studies and did the classic MMS certificate that I feel like so many VMS students do. And then I also minored in French. So right now I am working as managing director at Juve Consulting, which is a Gen Z marketing consultancy startup. So lots of buzzwords there. But basically what I do is I oversee all about like 20 to 30 of our project teams, and we work on a variety of non-for-profit clients to like Fortune 500 companies. It sort of depends. And I oversee our project teams and the work they do. Since I have some agency experience, I make sure the quality that we're delivering is up to clients' expectations, but I also sort of make sure that our project teams of college and high school contractors are set up for success. So I do quite a lot. It's a classic startup. But how I got here was that my Duke in New York internship as well. So I interned at Brand Assembly when I was in New York because I thought I wanted to be in fashion. Realized through that it probably wasn't the industry for me, but that I enjoyed branding quite a lot just because of the nature of Brand Assembly, working with different brands and then also marketing itself to brands to like have them buy into the trade show aspect. So that led me kind of into advertising. I ended up doing a strategic planning internship at an agency called McGarry Bowen after my junior year of college, which I loved. I fell in love with the strategy discipline. And then I got accepted into Ogilvy's associates program, which is a small cohort of people across 3 offices that rotate through different departments the first year after they graduate. And then you're placed automatically into a permanent position. So you're like a salaried employee, but you get to learn from a lot of different people. I would highly recommend it to anyone who's interested in advertising and going into their senior year. And that kind of led me into social strategy and an expertise on social channels, and then research insights and social listening. And that's what brought me into the startup. They wanted my expertise, and here I am. So that's me.
I didn't know about the detour into Ogilvy, which was not such a detour, but kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And also interesting that we do have someone in Brand Assembly, which is one of our, we don't always have someone in Brand Assembly, but they're known to us. So in the summer remote internship placements, it made sense as a place to go. And they're very friendly to staying in touch, which is Hillary's
so great. Like I'm still in touch with her. She's super kind and like loves giving Duke students some help and a leg up. So yeah, I really appreciate her.
Katherine.
Yes.
Remember
Hi.
the long list of things I asked you to do.
Yeah, I might be a little shorter than Mika, but my name is Katherine On. I also am class of 2019, majored in visual media studies. Had the opportunity to take classes with both Gianna and Mika, actually, especially during junior and senior year.
You know each other. Okay, good.
Yes. So yeah, so I'm happy to see them also here with you guys on this panel. I did Duke in New York my senior fall, and I interned at Swiss Institute that semester. And then I got lucky and received the offer back after graduation. So I've been here now for almost 2 years because I started in the summer after graduation. I started as development associate and executive assistant to the director. And now I'm development manager. So a lot of more of my responsibilities rely heavily on securing funds for our institute to actually be able to have shows and exhibitions and programming that we host at our gallery, and to remain free of charge to the public, which is a very big part of our mission. On top of that, we are also a very small team. It's a small team of 10 people, so very much like a startup. So kind of have to do a lot of everything, which includes overseeing our membership program and also creating a program for our donors, as well as overseeing our internship and events that we host throughout the year across the world. It was a bit difficult last year with COVID, but now that things are opening up and with the vaccine rolling out, we are a lot more hopeful and starting to do a lot more in-person events.
Yeah. Gianna?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Gianna Miller. I'm also class 2019, majored in visual media studies with a minor in art history. I did Duke in New York my sophomore fall, so I guess that was 2016. And then I interned at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And I actually came into the program not really with an interest in visual media studies. I wasn't sure really what it was at the time. So the lens that I went into my internship with was through public policy. And in that internship, I was able to work with feedback from departments and then also visitors, and then use that to create new policies for the museum. Very different from what I'm doing now. Now I work at Creative Artists Agency, which is a talent agency. I started in the mailroom, which is very similar to what you see on TV. It was, running around the city, delivering flowers, picking up hair gel for people, just odd in things, setting up meetings in the office. But now I'm in their brand consulting group, but specifically under social impact. And what we do is we work with brands to help align their business goals with impact initiatives.
Wow. So there's a lot of diversity on the panel in terms of the kinds of organizations that they're working for, and the kinds of things they do. It's interesting. I think we can probably start a dialogue. I would be nice to start a dialogue. So could the three guests unmute themselves and maybe talk about the kinds of the kinds of differences that the size of the place makes and the vibe of the place makes, and how one picks that up and works with it or doesn't?
Yeah, I can start there. So I actually also was able to intern at CAA prior to working there. And I was in their LA office, which was quite large compared to their New York office.
Is that Duke in LA, or was that through Duke in LA or on your own?
It was on my own.
Okay.
So it was my junior year summer when I interned in their LA office, and that was the first time that I'd really been in kind of a corporate setting like that. And so kind of just navigating what it's like, how do you interact with people in the office and all of that. I enjoyed being in the New York office just because it is a bit smaller. And I found I was able to build a bit more of a community. I think it also helped. There's a different vibe when you're working somewhere versus interning. Kind of interning, you're there for a short amount of time. So I've personally enjoyed the community I've been able to form with the smaller office.
Yeah, I can just jump in. It's interesting that you like New York, or like New York has a smaller field than LA. That's how I kind of feel about Chicago advertising. Like advertising is actually a huge industry in Chicago. There's so many agencies that have offices there. I think like New York gets most of the attention, but Chicago is really known in the industry for being an ad city. But the vibe there is just really different. Like there is more work-life balance. There are more people with families. It's a lot friendlier, and the offices are often a little smaller. So you just feel like it's a little bit of a closer knit energy. And so when I was at Ogilvy Chicago, even though it was a lot of learning how to navigate like the corporate structures and the different departments, it still felt kind of like a safe place to enter that world, if that makes sense. I think like I feel more confident going from like Chicago advertising to, let's say, like possibly a bigger New York agency in the future, because like I started kind of with a soft landing. I do think, you know, being at Brand Assembly, which is also like a much more nimble small team and was like still a startup when I was there at least a few years ago, it was interesting how everyone wore multiple hats. And then I went to Ogilvy where I felt almost too siloed. And now I'm back at a startup where I feel like I'm wearing maybe too many hats now. Yeah, it's just interesting to like compare and contrast those like different sizes of teams. So Katherine, I'd love to hear like more about how you feel about wearing so many hats.
Yeah. I can definitely affirm everything you said about wearing too many hats. And there are times where you do feel a bit spread thin. I would say though, the one pro though about working in a small team is that everyone who is there because they want to be there. I think that was such a huge attraction for me working at Swiss Institute as an intern, because you could see that was so clear. And as a result, the way they also treated their interns was almost essentially like you were a part of the actual team as like a real member, which was really meaningful. And so it makes it really easy to work with people, and teamwork as a result is super important. There's no way you're able to kind of be siloed, even if you wanted to be, like that wouldn't happen. And like it's impossible to work on individual projects. Like that's not a thing. A lot of teamwork. So as a result, there is a strong sense of community also, which is also really nice. And I think as like a first job out of college, it is a really soft landing, which is really nice. But it's also, for me, it does make me also wonder. And I am a bit curious more about what a corporate setting would be like, or even like maybe a bigger startup that is like in a, you know, bigger seed as opposed to like a seed A startup. Yeah.
I mean, it's really interesting, because if the class doesn't know, CCA is just a huge presence in its field.
Mhm.
Swiss Institute, like most galleries, is kind of a niche operation. And
Yes.
I hate to say this, Mika, but Juve was totally new to me. I mean,
Oh, that's okay. It's very much a startup.
and there's something bold about moving from something, you know, with a kind of track record to something which is a startup, which is not to be too, do you get some is there financial incentive for getting in?
Yeah, I'm comfortable sharing that. We should all be talking about money, especially as women and women of color. So I mean, part of the reason I did decide to move to Juve was because they so it is, I will say it is run mostly by college students or recent college grads. So it's a much younger company, and there's a lot of risk and different challenges and chaos that come from that. But they took a chance on me and put me into this managing director leadership position, which felt really good coming from Ogilvy, where I was very comfortable. But apologies, let me exit out my work chat.
And Ogilvy's just is a really big advertising firm.
It's a huge agency, and like I was doing very well there, but I knew for a fact that I wouldn't be promoted for at least a year, just because of how slow promotions in advertising work. And something that's tough about advertising is it's very easy to get stuck, and to not be able to move up. You have to move laterally. So I knew that I probably had to move laterally to a different agency. So I decided to take a chance on Juve because I wanted to, you know, get a little bit more leadership experience. And they did give me a huge salary bump, like something I probably wouldn't have made at Ogilvy for 2 to 3 years. And so I think this is taking the conversation a little bit of a different direction, but I think, you know, taking a chance, like, especially when you're younger, if you care about promotions, and if salary is something that's important to you, and it's okay if it is, definitely be open to lateral movement, because like every salary you get helps you negotiate either internally or for your next offer. It's like kind of like a receipt of like what your worth is, as like bad as that is to say. Like this salary now will give me leverage for like my next move. And it's like kind of like a pragmatic way of thinking about it, but I think it is important. I've seen so many people at Ogilvy, especially who didn't get promoted for 3 years, haven't gotten more than like a 3K salary bump. And even though, marketing and entertainment is such a fun industry to be in, there is a lot of problem with like, undervaluing people. And you have to be really assertive and kind of strategic about how you go about your moves.
Just to kind of interject there, advertising is it notorious? It's pretty notorious for you make lateral moves, and
Yes.
you keep your relationships with the company you're leaving. Everybody understands this.
Yeah.
And people go out and form their own groups, and they bring their buddies with them.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's an industry where hopping is quite welcome. I would imagine that's not true in the gallery world, Katherine. You kind of people stay where they.
So yeah, so as you guys all may know, the art industry is very, very small. So I work in a niche art institution in terms, if you look from the mainstream lens, but we are pretty big. We're considered a pretty big art organization in the city.
Yeah.
And you at this point, I probably met almost every single person that's pretty nameable in the industry, just because of association, because of work. And as a result, it is, hold on, give me 1 second. I'm in the office, so our office is open. So yes, I'm here. But right, there isn't a lot of movement just because the industry is small. So there is not many openings that require someone to move, whether it is laterally, like Mika said, or you move to a different sector of the industry, which would rather be from institution to a actual like blue chip gallery, or to an auction house, or to bigger museums, and etc. So it is hard. It is hard to bring people with you per se, but the relationships that you hold at your previous positions or places are extremely important, because you will always work with them even if you're somewhere else. Yeah.
And it's a small network of people, so people know the other people.
Yes.
Yeah, and I also want to continue off that kind of like salary conversation. I mean, entertainment is notorious for either underpaying people until you make it, then you're overpaid. And I'm definitely in that situation now, but
being overpaid, is it, Gianna?
The underpaid part. Haven't made it there yet. But I do value some kind of non-monetary things that I'm getting out of my position. I think the network that I'm able to create while I'm at CAA, I'm just working with some of the best and biggest minds in the business, and as well specific to my group, I think there is a lot of responsibility placed on everyone. So just the amount of work that I'm able to see, and the level of interaction I can have with the accounts that we work with, I think I feel very fortunate, just coming out of college, being able to have all of that contact.
Yeah, I think that's a big part. I'm also in the underpaid part, but that is also, I work at a institution, so that's also part of the game, unfortunately. But yeah, there are so many non-monetary things that are highly valuable, which is like the people I get to come in contact with and work with through this job, and being a small team is what gives me that opportunity as well, is really valuable too.
Yeah, definitely. Like when I started at Ogilvy, like very decent starting salary for advertising, but still underpaid. But Ogilvy's known as like the teaching hospital of advertising. And so I was able to learn so much. And what's great about some of the more established agencies, like I imagine like CAA is also like that, but like Ogilvy, DDB, I'm trying to think of some of the other ones. Oh, Publicis maybe? No, I'm I'm blanking on some of the bigger, like Havas, those sorts of agencies, is that you'll get a lot of industry veterans who come from like boutique firms or have bounced around quite a lot. Like at Ogilvy, so many of the people I worked with were at least like 5 years into their career. So it was so great to learn from all of them and see how, you know, they managed accounts or did strategy. And like, I was also given like a good amount of responsibility, but learning from them and working like alongside them was super valuable. And I think is what gave me the confidence to actually leave. But Ogilvy does have this funny thing called boomerangs where they do like people like they say boomerang back and like are rehired onto the team. And I think that's very common in advertising. As Mariana said, like there is a high turnover rate. So lots of moves are like very normal.
I was stunned at that because in academia, you don't do that in quite the same way. I think I'd like to open it questions up to the group, and then we'll come back to some things that certainly I'm curious about, but I think the group probably has some things it would like to know. And I should also say for the larger audience as well, that we deliberately were looking for recent graduates because we wanted, the class is at the stage of starting the internship. And there's, as you know, there's always the question of, why am I doing this? And how will this possibly work for me? And so we did want to get people who are fairly recent grads who can understand that terrain and help our students navigate it. But questions from the group? Oh, I see Jesse's hand.
Yes, yeah, I had a question for y'all. I guess like I'm sure even if you don't have like the personal experience of doing both, I'm sure you run into people who have. But I was a little curious about kind of like what's the experience like doing consulting, like for example, doing marketing consulting versus like doing marketing for a specific brand or doing branding for a specific brand versus doing that as a consulting job. Like kind of what do you guys see as like sort of the benefits or like the major like differences that you kind of come to like appreciate, or I don't know. Yeah, I'm kind of still figuring out what I would want to do like for a specific brand, or like it would be consulting. So any insight would be really helpful.
Gianna, I don't know if you've been in-house. Have you?
No, I haven't.
Okay, me neither. I can start off. So basically when you're in advertising or you're doing marketing consulting, you're at an agency, right, that has to pitch its services and products to clients. And usually you'll be on multiple different businesses at once. So a brand will come to an agency either looking for like a retainer, so multiple projects, whatever they need, or they'll come with a specific project, such as like a rehaul of like their social media strategy. And so it's very restricted to budget, the contract of what the client wants. And then, and this is the pitfall of being at an agency, is that the client's word is always the last word. So you can pitch the most exciting strategy, the most interesting content, the like most exciting influencer partnership. But if the client doesn't want to do it, is risk adverse, or maybe some of their budget gets pulled, which happens all the time, you can't do that idea. So like I would say the pros are that like there's a lot of like variety and it's fast paced and you get a lot of like industry experience because you're often working in multiple industries at once. But the cons is that like the client always has the final say. I've never been in-house, but just like talking to people who have and working with clients, I know that like in-house marketing or brand management is much slower paced. So it takes a long time to get things done, but you are in control of the budgets and the ultimate direction of a campaign or a product. And I also know that usually marketing comes with more like analytical or financial literacy too, because you're oftentimes analyzing a lot of sales data and needing to use that, I don't know, just like working with that more and like working with retailers or wholesalers. And there's just like a little bit more than just marketing when you're client side, at least from my experience.
Yeah, and just from the agency side, I personally enjoy being able to be on so many different accounts. I could be someone who could easily get bored if I'm working on one thing, for an extended period of time. So it's just fun to work on a lot of different accounts who have a lot of different goals. That's the thing for us too. But like Mika was saying, the client does have the final say. So you know, if they don't like it at the end of the day, it's pulled, which is heartbreaking sometimes, but a part of the game.
I guess maybe I'm missing Jesse's question, but one of the things that has startled me in recent years was that students describe in Duke of New York, which is, let's say the usual class of 16, maybe 3 to 4 people say that their professional goal is to be a consultant. And my initial reaction was to say, oh, a consultant about what? So was that sort of the question, Jesse, that, can you brand yourself as a consultant right out of college, or do you have to know what you want to consult about before you become a consultant?
Yeah, no, I was just like kind of curious, sort of like what they had answered about sort of how being like in-house, like working for one brand really differs. So yeah, that's kind of what I was curious about.
It was very professorial, the idea.
It's okay.
It's okay. Consult about.
It's very Duke for people to want to be consultants, so it's probably where you're coming from.
Oh yeah, so many.
What is that, Gianna? What?
I can't quite figure that one out. I mean, I don't know.
It's like when people say they want to be an entrepreneur. Well, tell me more.
Yeah. I really think it is that like consulting is a great place to go if you don't really know what you want to do. And like what Gianna and I were saying, like you get so much exposure to different accounts and industries. And I think for some people that does help give them direction. That's my guess.
No, I think no, it's true though, because for me as someone who knew kind of like, I was very like, I knew exactly what I wanted and like, I'm doing exactly what I want, but there's like the pitfall, like you don't know what is outside of it. And it can be hard because now when you think about like, what are other possibilities, then you do have to do a bit more research on your part as well.
Yeah, that's fair.
Questions?
Zara has a question. Yeah.
Oh, good. I can't see Zara.
Hi.
I'm glad you're having. Oh, there you are. Hi.
Yep. So when I heard Gianna sort of talk about her like Duke and New York fall experience, I was like, wow, she sounds like exactly like what I'm about to go into this fall, because you also did it sophomore fall. You intern at the Met, which is like one of the places I'm trying to like go for. And you went in with it as like a pub pol person. I'm like sort of an econ thinking about pub pol person right now. So I don't know. I just wanted to hear a bit more about your experience. Doing that.
Yeah, well, to be
Zara is going to do Duke of New York in the fall like a real person.
Awesome. A real person. To be honest, it was actually in that internship and through the Duke of New York program that I realized I didn't want to do public policy. Not a knock to my internship at all. I actually had an amazing time. I had a great supervisor who really just opened my eyes in the art world, and then also just to New York. I had a great relationship with her. But yeah, it was through that I realized I didn't necessarily want to go into policy. But while I was there, it was really interesting being able to see the feedback from visitors, or just how the different internal departments work together to make new policy.
Now, I always say, and perhaps my former students would like to say, oh, you're a moron, but because they can say that now. But I always say that it's as valuable to do an internship which says, oh no, I don't want to go in that direction, because otherwise you can move to a place, you can spend a year of your life in a place.
Absolutely.
Oh, okay, you agree then?
Yeah, I mean, I feel lucky that I did the program early, like, as a first semester sophomore, just because it gave me complete direction for what I wanted to do at Duke moving forward. Mm-hmm. It's how I ended up as a BMS major.
Okay. Another question? There's something I would really like to know. We're beginning to come out of Zoom land, but I was kind of wondering whether you had severe impacts at work moderate impacts at work, just sort of light, you know, what difference the last year made in your professional world?
Yeah, I can start. It's been severe and light, I guess, in a way for me. I actually, going into the pandemic, I was still in the mailroom and a floater, which means you're basically a substitute assistant for, you know, if someone's out of office, you take their spot and make sure the agent essentially doesn't know that their assistant is gone. And then in July, I was furloughed. So I was furloughed until the end of the year. And an opening in the social impact department came up and I applied for it and was able to get the job. So I've kind of been all around the world during this pandemic.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. But it was also, you skillfully saw a moment that was right to take this new direction and grow for it, which is great. Scary to be furloughed. Shit.
Yeah, it was absolutely terrifying. And I do feel lucky because when I started at CA, I did know I wanted to go into the social impact department. So the timing of it, I guess, still worked out for me, but it was a scary time in the summer through the end of 2020.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really stressful, but I love how you were able to apply and then still get into a role that like you care about. I think that's awesome. I guess I was fairly affected because advertising is such a collaborative industry. Like it's so many meetings during the day, and you know, we did like dial-in meetings with clients in the office, but I think shifting to remote collaboration, brainstorming, creative briefings, presenting to client, like it was definitely a shift in the ways of working. And I don't think I had to adapt myself too much, but definitely like managers had to adapt, and team leaders had to adapt in terms of like how we met as a team, how we checked in. And then because I was still in my rotational year, I did have to rotate to a new team remotely, which I was like really nervous about. It was just intimidating to like have to be on a new team and pick up new work very remotely. But I think that experience being successful and having gone through that like prepared me to like leave my job and start this job remotely. Even though I'm in New York now, I'm remote most of the time, and so I think it's definitely helped me understand like how to communicate a little bit better and how to be able to collaborate with people far away. And I actually think for the creative industry, it's amazing because it opens up so many more doors to collaboration. You know, like you're no longer siloed to those who are in your office. Like you can collaborate with someone anywhere. And so we're seeing in advertising a lot more cross office teams and collaboration. And I think that that's actually a really good thing for the industry.
Yeah. How about you, Katherine? You're already back in the office, which is amazing.
I've been back in the office since September, so
Oh.
that might say something about the industry. Because museums and galleries were part of the NYC reopening plan.
I know. I think that's
they opened in September. So since then, actually, a lot of our offices in that sector were open. So we're back.
and was that with reduced admissions and all that? Timed admission?
Yes. So everything was timed, reduced admission. We also functioned at a reduced admission, but at that time, New York was pretty empty.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, so that was a huge part. So there weren't that many people visiting in general anyways. But I think in terms of work for us as an institution, which essentially means we are a nonprofit, and I work on the development side, which means I am the one that brings in income. Like we do that. So that was there was a moment of panic because a lot of our fundraising relies heavily on being able to host events, bring donors to our building, show, let them meet the artists and experience our programs and be participating in part of kind of like our Swiss Institute culture, and not being able to show that at all, period, because no one was traveling was really big. As a result, we did have to do a lot of more creative thinking on our side and trying to think of other more ways to create campaigns and like fundraising campaigns. And so that actually allowed us to stem, like Mika said, like we actually were able to actually collaborate with 14 other NYC art nonprofit organizations that are similar size to us. So then we created a consortium of 15 organizations, and we've been very successful, thankfully, for that, and like reaching out to almost every single foundation imaginable. And that has helped everyone, at least on our consortium at the least, maintain full employment, including a lot of part-time.
That's great.
Which is
that was one thing I would expect, that your industry would sort of take care of people during this period.
And that was something that I think I was fortunate to be in a institution, because a lot of galleries did lay off almost 50% of their employees regardless.
It's been a remarkable year, to put it mildly. And I mean, I can only hope that the direction that we're going in now is the one that continues and life goes back to normal. All right, so we are actually out of time, but I'm going to ask for like a 1-sentence answer from each of the guests. And it's a question that I've been asked to ask by students. What single bit of advice would you give to this group just starting internships? Things they should think about, just one thing, the major piece of advice.
I'm thinking one, like, don't be afraid to be curious and ask questions. I feel that people are more forgiving to that when you're an intern. So like, ask away. And 2, network laterally. I feel there's always a focus on like, you know, how can I sit with the CEO or the president of the company, but really it's your peers who I think will have like the most effect in your career. So network with the other interns.
Yeah.
That's, yeah, because people will move up, and
Exactly.
that's actually really great.
Yeah.
I think that like it's really important when you're an intern to say yes to everything within reason, of course. Like, don't let yourself be exploited. But by that, I mean, like, raise your hand when a new opportunity comes up. And like, if you don't know how to do it, it's fine. Like, this is one of the only times in your life when you don't have to know how to do everything. And basically all of my best experiences when I was an intern and all the things I was able to learn from were things I didn't know how to do, and I just said I would do it. People are always impressed by someone who is willing to take a risk and learn. And then if you're able to pull it off, it's a win. If you don't really pull it off and you mess up, that's okay, because you're an intern. So that's my advice.
Yeah, I mean, just to speak, I mean, I echo both of the things that Gianna and Mika said. And like, on top of that, like, most of the times, like, the things that they ask of interns, a lot of it is because like truly is like lack of resources. Like, they really, someone has to do it, and it's just like, we don't have the time to do it at the moment. So like, definitely saying yes to any opportunities. And even though you might not, let's say, like, fully succeed, most of the time, like, the level at which, like, as a Duke student especially, like, you deliver something and you think is not your 100% best is like, you'd be surprised that it is actually like really good work, even though it might not be like correct. So like, don't be too discouraged by the fact that you feel like you don't really know the 100% story or like all the details of like a project you're working on. Because a lot of times it is a lot of just like hands-on asking questions to people and like Googling and things like that. And definitely network in the sense of like, not trying to really actively like network, but like just befriend the people you're working with and like take a genuine interest laterally is really important for sure. Because if you want to return, like, those will be your peers and like the people you might work with and who will be the ones to help you. And that's like the way to actually like build a community. It's like the first step to building a community essentially in like a social setting. So
Well, listen, I'm so proud of all 3 of you. I mean, well, I'm proud of all of you, but I'm so proud of the 3 of you. I mean, it's amazing to see what has happened for you in such a short period of time. And, you know, I think Duke in New York is great that way. It provides, it's a tag phrase I picked up from a student is that it's a lab for life. And I think it does do that. And I'm so pleased to know that it's led to interesting things for you. And you're, you know, you may not feel that way, but you're very young, and a lot is going to happen for you in the next decades. So we usually end with a round of applause, and we might as well do that. And thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you for having us. And if anyone is interested in advertising specifically, Jane, you have my email, so feel free, and you can connect with me on LinkedIn.
Is that okay with everyone if they got email? Yeah. Yeah.
Great. Thanks all.
Okay. Is that okay, Gianna?
Yeah, no, I extend the same for entertainment.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.